Welcome to Look Behind the Look, the new podcast that examines iconic looks in film, television, music, and fashion history. I'm your host, Tiffany Bartok. Hello. I am not going to waste any of your time. This one is a bonus episode. I was not going to wait around to give you Pam and Tommy details. The series is out today, 2/2/22. It's on Hulu. You need to see it. And now I'm going to let you in on some secrets about how it was created. As you know, I have had the great pleasure of having my friend Barry Lee Moe on the show in episode 2 of season 1. So please head there after this to hear more about his incredible career. But for now, we're going to get straight to Pam and Tommy. Welcome to all that you need to know about the creative process of bringing Lily James as Pamela Anderson and Sebastian Stan as Tommy Lee alive in the hair and makeup trailer. I'm bringing you Barry Lee Moe, the hair department head, David Williams, the makeup department head, and Jason Collins, special makeup effects designer of Autonomous FX. They're going to provide an amazing rundown and tons of details about how these looks were created, stories from the set, and, as always, so much more. Enjoy. Hi, everybody. Hey, Barry.
Hi.
So good to see you.
Hi.
Nice to meet you,
Hi.
Jason and David. Oh my gosh, my absolute pleasure. I just literally was looking for my lucky crystal because I'm so excited to talk to all of you, and I don't want to forget everything. And this will help me to not forget all my questions. I just came off of watching the entire thing. It was funny because I originally thought that this was a film, maybe 2 episodes. Do you know? And then when I got the screeners, it was 8. And I was like, how can we talk about this tape for 8 episodes? But lo and behold, completely riveted, and engrossed. As you know, there's so much to this story. And I can't believe all the different looks you covered and all of the nooks and crannies. So congratulations. What a feat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sure you guys are excited. Everybody has been talking about this from the pictures that went viral right from the release. And that was so exciting for me. And how have you been feeling about all of this? How did you come to the project altogether? How did you know that it was going to be cast with these 2 people? And can you tell me about those beginning days?
I was originally contacted by one of the producers, and he was actually calling me to get a reference of somebody who might be interested in doing the show. I was on another show at the time, and he knew I was on another show. And I said, yes, I would be interested in doing the show. And he's like, but you're doing a show. I said, this is one I'm really interested. I've never left a show. This is a project I'm really interested in. I just had a feeling. My gut was this is going to be big. It's going to be major. It's something it's the kind of thing I love doing, recreating people who are in the zeitgeist of America. And he said, well, then that's a done deal. And then I immediately called Barry and Jason.
Okay. So it began with you, David. Amazing. Okay. So
And I had worked with Chip, our producer, before. So once David let me know about the project, I was like, found out who the producer was, and I was super excited as well. So it kind of, David and I had worked together before, and Jason and David had worked together before. So it was a nice way to bring us all together.
Fantastic. And Jason, you all had known each other.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'm actually David's drug dealer. So,
okay, good. That's good. Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. David and I had worked together on a couple of previous projects, but we were working, I think we were working at that time on that project that you were on prior to this project. And he had mentioned that to me, he gave me a call, and I said, wow, that sounds interesting. I think that would be a challenge for sure.
Oh my God. Did you know who was Pamela and who was Tommy?
At that
I was
point,
KG at first with Jay. Oh, you meant the actors. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Jason.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah.
No, I don't
who
think
was playing Pamela and Tommy?
I don't think we knew really. I mean, maybe David, or Barry, you guys knew prior, but I don't think I knew prior to that first phone conversation. I think offers are out to people, but I don't think anything was solidified at that point.
Okay. So did you know, that's my main question is, did you know what you were going to do to create Pamela before you knew who was playing Pamela? Or
Well,
when?
We had a big creative meeting with, at least I did, before I completely signed on, with all of the
Got
producers
it.
and writers to discuss who Pamela Anderson was to me, what she meant to me, what I felt I could bring to the project in recreating her. And this was all before any casting had been revealed to me. So I was really operating off of the images that are burned in my brain from childhood and looking up to Pam as the bombshell that she was, and just as a hair inspiration to me. And I think that meeting was interesting because I got to look at it through a different lens before knowing who the individual was that we were going to transform.
Right. And then once that was revealed, how did you feel?
I was excited because it wasn't immediately something that you're like, oh, this is Pam Anderson. This was easy. It was, this is Lily James, and she's very recognizable and famous. And how are we going to get there? And that's when we kind of started doing our compare and contrast, I think, as a team in our respective departments, and analyzing every detail of both women's faces, and seeing how are we going to get here in the most believable way.
And how did you do that? Are there side to side images? How did you, what are the most important things that make the transformation so convincing?
I think it started with David's work, and he can jump in and kind of speak to that.
You hit it right on the money there, Tiffany. What we do is we literally sit images of both of those actors face to face, looking at all the images that we've created and what we have of both of them. And, you know, we're turning one beautiful woman into another beautiful woman. So that's a plus, because we're not dealing with anything that's seriously corrective on either one of them. So we look at form and shape and structure, ratio of, for example, Pam's forehead to Lily's forehead. That's an identifiable feature of Pam. And the brows, really, both of these women have incredibly identifiable brows. So we had to figure out how to make that work, how to make Pam's brows work with Lily. Consequently, what we wound up using was a forehead piece that gave us a two-fold solution to our issues. It gave us the ability to create the higher forehead, where Barry could set the hairline where it was appropriate for Pam's hairline. And we could cover Lily's brows. And Jason and Autonomous Effects created this incredible piece that was thicker in certain areas and thinner in other areas as it goes up the forehead to create exactly Pam's forehead, cover that. And then Sasha Camacho Van Dyke made fine lace pieces, hand-sewn lace pieces, which are actually the brows that we apply for Pam's brows.
Okay, so now you've covered the brow question that I have, because I was like trying to pinch the screen, which you can't, and to see exactly how those brows got there. They were incredible. Yeah. Those thin brows were incredible. And now, turn this off, Mom and Dad. Let's talk about the prosthetic body parts a little bit here. That's Jason. That's you. Let's talk about that, because I was totally convinced with Pam's breasts, and they looked amazing, fabulous. And that could have gone really wrong. So I was just, I thought they were so great. And they're such an important part of her. Let's be honest. I mean, you know, they're very important. And I felt like it was done really respectfully. And I wondered what that process was like.
Well, we start off the process like we do everything, with the live cast and a scan of the actor. And that sort of gives us, like, Lily was, at the time, she was in London doing a film, finishing up a film. So I was able to call a colleague over there to have her go over to the colleagues and get a live cast and a chest cast made. A live cast is a whole head cast, gives us the exact dimensions of her head as well as the chest as well. And he shipped that over to us so we can sort of get an early start on it. David and I can sort of take a look and see. It's one thing to be looking at pictures of Lily James. It's another thing to be looking at a 3D dimensional live cast of somebody. Yeah. So you can actually really start seeing what you have to work with, what's your palette going to be. So when we got that live cast, we obviously knew, you know, we knew we were going to be getting into the breasts, of course. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that was one of those things that, you know, like you said, it can be tricky, right? As far as like the realism is concerned, because, you know, those things, you know, a prosthetic has to be designed to move with the actor in which it's applied to.
Totally.
So it's one thing to say, oh, we're going to do these perfect boobs and apply them to Lily, and they're going to be perfect in every shot, and they're going to do exactly what they need to do. But that's not exactly the case. It's not how it always works out. So you really have to test this stuff. So David and I looked at it, and we looked at pictures of Pam, and we sort of decided on a time period in which we, because Pam's breasts
Oh, yes, of
evolved.
course.
Right. They went back and forth, over the years.
That.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you kind of, what you don't want to do is you don't want to, take the audience's eye out of it. So we knew early on, we didn't want to go back and forth or anything. We didn't want to be that accurate as much as just decide on what was going to work really well on Lily. And of course, everybody's body is a little different. Like, torsos are different sizes and lengths and everything. You could sculpt the most perfect pair of breasts on Lily that match Pam and all the photo shoots and everything, but go to apply it. Right. And, her torso is different and things are different. So you kind of have to take Lily's form into consideration when you're starting to sculpt those things. So, for us, we look at silhouette, what's going to look great from behind her, from the side of her, because she had a lot of costumes that had a lot of revealing side perspectives at the premieres and things like that, and as well as the Baywatch bathing suit, which we can get into a little later. But the idea was that, and also, of course, for the videotape and things like that. So we were fortunate to have a production and actors that were really supportive in the testing process, and it was one of those situations where, you don't always get multiple tests. A lot of times these days, people want to sort of try to speed up the process and do one test, and then you sort of evolve the look as you're shooting.
I didn't think about that. You have to have you have to get it. You have to get it right.
Without a doubt. And, and everybody wanted to get it right. The actors wanted to get it right. The producers and the creators of the show wanted to get it right. All three of us are perfectionists. We want to get everything right. We'll do 17 tests if you allow us. Yes. But so what we did is we tested it out, and we went back to the drawing board, I think 3 or 4 times, right, David?
We did complete redos a couple of times of the breasts. I mean, it really, for me, it all comes down to that bathing suit. They got to look good in that bathing suit. Yeah. And I kept going back to this episode of Friends. I don't know if you ever watched Friends and remember, there's a scene where Joey is in one room and Chandler's in his apartment, and they're both watching the opening to Baywatch. Oh, yeah. And Chandler says to Joey, run, Jasmine, run like the wind. Because they're talking about it's like the best show ever in the history of TV. And I was like, these have to run like the wind.
So true. Oh my gosh. Thank God you saw that episode, because this informed,
Thank you, Chandler.
Thank you, Chandler. Oh my goodness. So the bathing suit now, okay. So I know I have all of the looks broken down, but the bathing suit, would you say, is the most difficult to put together because it was the most iconic, the biggest challenge?
It was the most stressful for me. It was one of those, as Jason was saying, we got to get it right. Yeah. The devil's in the details, and we're the 3 little devils, and there's no room for error. And so that one personally caused me the most stress. I even called one of my spiritual advisors, because like most people in California, it takes 2 astrologers, a psychic, a dream therapist, 100%, a numerologist to keep me moving. So
totally on board with that.
3 a.m, I'm calling one of my people, and I'm like, okay. And he's like, he kind of like talked me off the mountain and gave me some good advice in that moment. Barry, you can talk how that day felt for you.
Yeah, we were all so nervous, and we were quite a ways into production at that point. But when you think about that bathing suit, the cut of it is so unique that it
and then you guys,
a lot more.
They go in on it, how intricate it was at the time to get the wedgie just right and all that stuff. So I understand completely what you're saying.
Yeah. And we didn't have, we had no practice at that. And we had not been on the ocean yet with the wigs and the prosthetics. And so we had all those things to consider, the sand, the salt water, all of those elements, and wondering, how is this going to affect our work? And all of us were nervous that day. But thankfully, it went well. And then the very next day, all of those paparazzi images hit And, that day was already stressful, but then we had paparazzi around that we didn't even know about. There was a guy out in the ocean, which we thought it looked like he was holding a baby, very sneaky. And we got everyone set up for the shot of her running down to the beach, and they called action. And then all of a sudden that baby turned into a long lens camera, and that guy got those shots that came out in the papers the next day, and we couldn't get to him. It was, very clever on his behalf, but it was just ruthless.
Wow.
Thankfully, those were the best thing for our process, because it affirmed that we were on the right track. And it gave us a closer look at how she looked out in the sun, in the daylight, in the elements,
You're
and
like,
how we could
thanks.
improve.
Thank you for the research here.
Yeah.
It was great. That moment of validation was great.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
My other thing with the breastplate, one day going across, this was in the first week or so of shooting, Lily and I are walking across the parking lot, and I was talking to her about, we have to remember to be modest with wearing this. You don't feel like you've got, you're exposed because you feel like you have something on with this prosthetic,
right.
But other people aren't going to see that. They're not going to react to you. That they're going to think those are yours. And we walk by a grip on the back of a truck on his cell phone, and he literally almost falls off the back of the truck when Pam Anderson walks by. And I was like, we got it. That's what we want. And when those images came out, I was like, the world is falling off the back of the truck.
Right. Exactly. And from the get-go, you got such validation when you released that one image that went viral too. Everybody was just like, we need to see this now, inject this into our veins. And how does that feel? That's, you talk about spiritual advisors and stuff. Did you feel like we're doing the right thing? Because I do want to ask you guys a little bit about one person who hasn't weighed in on this, and that's Pam. And, I wondered how the three of you, I know Barry and his integrity so well, and I know you all are working professionals. And how do you feel about telling Pam's story visually like this and without Pam?
I think our hope in the beginning was that at some point she would weigh in, but it didn't turn out to be that way. And all of our concern from the get-go before we even started the process was sensitivity to a woman who had already been through a lot surrounding this piece. And our goal was to not bring any more trauma to her by telling this story. So it was always our intention to honor her in the most respectful way and to make Lily the most beautiful representation of Pam that we could, so that it wasn't a caricature of a woman that has already been objectified endlessly in this industry, and instead a humanization of her and her story for the world to see a different side of it. So the sensitivity to that was the utmost concern for all of us on the production, from the writers all the way down to every crew member involved. It was super important that we stay in the right space for that.
That is so wonderfully said. Yes, David?
I was just going to say, I hope as an audience member to this, she feels what I hope the audience feels, is that there is no greater steward of Pam's image and no greater student of her than Lily James was. She was spectacular in doing everything that she could to really, really do justice to the part and do justice to the person in the situation that they were in, having been victimized by privacy being stolen and then distributed to the world against their wishes, which is different than brokering privacy, because that's a choice. This was not a choice that she made. These were very personal, private moments that were stolen. And it was in the beginning of all of that happening. And we can all see how that, it changed. It changed the world we live in, and it changed the feelings about what privacy are. It's a different world post that for celebrity.
And Lily was such a great leader to all of us in making sure that we stayed true to what Pam would want had she been involved. Lily would look at scenes and say, I don't think this is right. This is going too far. Or she was very involved in kind of enforcing that the story was told with care.
Yeah. Honestly, it took me like 2 days to watch all the episodes. And they of course went into my dreams because, when you binge watch things, they go into your dreams and stuff. And I just felt like, gosh, I hope she watches this because it's going to change the minds of so many people about how they talk about this whole event. I thought it did such a great job of showing how she was victimized, how she had no control over the situation. It really evaluates how we consume pop culture and, makes you sort of check yourself. And I really appreciated the whole project. I thought the performance was incredible. And that's not to keep Sebastian Stan out of the conversation, who I haven't even talked about. And Jason, we haven't even talked about his penis.
Whoa. I don't know what you're talking about.
Spoiler alert. What was it? Episode 2.
Yeah.
Where, we are welcomed with I don't even know what was involved. Animatronics? How did this happen?
Yeah, it's an animatronic. It's what we call a cable controlled mechanism, essentially.
So are you remote controlling it? Okay.
Yeah, there's 2 remote control puppeteers behind him during the whole thing. One of them is doing what we call gross body movement, no pun intended, where it's left, right, up, down. And the other one is, which essentially makes the urethra speak.
Okay.
It's funny when you first read these things on paper, right? It's like, you're like,
I was wondering, obviously.
When we were reading that portion of the script, I was like, oh, wow, that's interesting. Or we're going into that territory. And your mind goes in a million different directions of what this thing could look like.
In reading Tommyland, when you look at that book and how Tommy wrote that book in conversation with himself, that's what the writers, Rob, was pulling from.
Got it.
Yeah.
But in my mind, when I first wrote it, I thought this is going away. Or in my head, I don't know why, I imagined it would be like a Jim Henson type of puppet.
Yep.
Right.
Like fuzzy with little eyebrows. But then Jason came in and it was like, this is not what I expected at all, but it totally works.
Well, it's funny because you have to do all those. Sorry, my phone cut out there.
No, that's all right.
Sorry, it's funny because you have to illustrate the really audacious, silly stuff, because you have to put that in front of producers and other people to say, okay, we don't want to go in that direction. So,
that's interesting.
Right. From a design perspective, I believe the first designs we did like little googly eyes, and we made it a little silly because certainly it could read that way. I mean, depending on how they want to do it.
Sure.
And then further talks with David and Craig and DV and Rob, they're like, yeah, I think we need to go much more naturalistic so we don't take the audience completely out of it. We already have a talking penis. I don't think we need to take the audience out of it any further than that. So
thank God Pam's boobs didn't talk, because guys, I don't know, I might have gotten sick today. Guys,
but I think it's perfect for the character, really, and perfect for the show.
Yeah.
And also
I was just gonna say, I love the way they wrote it, because it's absurdism in a way. Like it's something you don't expect. And one of the things, I've done a ton of sketch comedy shows, and when you are going into the land of absurdity, the more real you make what you're looking at look, versus going with the absurdity in the look as well. That just makes everything absurd. But if you've got something that's real in there, in the realm of fantasy or absurdity, it makes it more believable.
I mean, I 100% thought it was happening. Like, I was like, this happened. I don't know. This is a documentary.
And I also, it also made him vulnerable in that moment.
Yes, 100%.
Not saying we all would have a conversation with body parts, but we've all been in that situation where we're having that, private bathroom conversation with ourselves in the mirror, or saying like, how do I feel about this? I just met this incredible woman. This is going to change my life. Like, don't mess this up. But I think, it was also a vulnerable moment for Sebastian and Tommy's character to just kind of check in with himself and be like, whoa, I've really met maybe a woman who could change my life.
Yeah, you realize the person recognizes their defect, and that's powerful.
Wow. Also,
what are you saying, David? You saying there's a defect there? Because
I mean, and it ties into the whole theme of all this, like the self-examination of all the characters, Seth Rogen,
Yeah.
And his struggle. Oh my God, what a disaster. I mean, poor Seth, he's going to get left out of the conversation because we don't know what that guy looks like and we can't compare, but God, he did such a great job. Oh my gosh. And, I know that it wasn't a stretch to make him look the way he did, but it must have been a conversation, to not make him look too ridiculous. He really looked like a guy. This is happening. I believe all of this. There was nothing cartoony about it. And it was a great performance.
Well,
I think that's a testament to your work.
He was the balance in the story. He balanced out the Tom and Pammy of it all, and his storyline brought that kind of everyman, real everyday worker type of character, and it was a nice contrast, and that played that part beautifully. But Rand was a real person, and we did have images of him. But he wasn't someone who was recognizable to the public, so it wasn't as important to take him to that place. And the real Rand had very dark hair, similar to Tommy Lee's in color. He did have a mullet. It was a little bit more feathered out and a little bit more styled of the times. So it was a decision of how do we make Seth look as much like Seth playing Rand, maintaining some of Seth's like great natural acting abilities and characteristics, but still taking him into this world. So we ended up, shaving his beard, putting him into a mullet that was, representative of Seth's hair color when he was younger, and then Seth's hair texture, but keeping that silhouette that was of the period so that he looked like the everyman like Rand was, but he still wasn't a characterization of the real Rand, because no one knew who that was,
Yeah, that's a really good decision to make, to go more towards the Seth of it all, right?
Also, what we want to do in this situation is and you can see with all of our main characters, we've got two main characters that are complete and total transformations. They're unlike anything you've ever seen these people look like. Everybody around them that's centered around in that main cast, we've got to modulate to the place that we're changing them as well, where they're not exactly what you're used to seeing them as, and that they're full characters in and of themselves. Like they're completely characters as well, so that they all fit into the same show, so that everybody is at the same level.
That happened. That happened. I mean, I just kept thinking like it could have gone so wrong. I mean, my favorite movie this year was The Eyes of Tammy Faye. And it's another case where, because everybody was in the same world, it all worked. And you've seen it where if you put all your time and energy into Tommy and Pam, and then forget about everything else, you shoot yourself in the foot.
Well, that's interesting you say that too, because we had all those secondary characters as well. I mean, I wouldn't call them secondary characters, but they were characters like Jay Leno and other characters where it was important to get right, the whole Tonight Show thing. And, David and Barry can sort of speak more to that. But, with regards to, prosthetic characters and not wanting to make people into caricatures, that was another thing that you had to really consider, was the looks of everybody else, so that they didn't sort of pull the audience out of what we've already built with the two central characters in which the show was taking place about, but that we populated it with believability everywhere else. And that was a really important thing. And I think the Tonight Show was something that all of us were really particularly worried about, to make sure that we got it right.
Well, of course, immediately after watching it, I went down the YouTube rabbit hole and watched that same interview, as I'm sure everybody's going to do. And, you did an excellent job. I mean, it was great. She's incredible. I mean, I hope all amazing things happen for all of you guys, because her performance was just incredible. And Sebastian Stan as well. And I wanted to ask too, the two episodes that stood out to me were directed by Lake Bell. And I wondered, I was going to ask you while I had you, what it's like working with the different directors. I mean, what happens in these that are 8 episodes long? What does a different director bring to each one? Because I noticed the two that affected me the most were the same director. So I was wondering, from your standpoint, what does that mean when another director, we have Lake Bell today, we have so-and-so today, what does that do for you guys?
It's always interesting working with different directors,
Mhm.
because every show is different. Sometimes each director brings something completely different, and then sometimes, like in this case, we had a tone that was set by Craig
Right.
Gillespie, and he kind of set the tone for the piece, and then the other directors had to come in and attempt to match that while still bringing their own characteristics to the
Yeah.
process.
How does that work?
And I think that it can be challenging, I would imagine, as a director to maintain the same tone and keep your voice at the same time.
Mhm, mhm.
And Lake was one of those people, I think, that she has such a strong voice and vision for what she wants. And she's also a woman, and
Right.
she was one of our, I think, our first female director, right?
Yes.
In the process. So it was the first time when Craig left that a woman stepped into the shoes.
Hmm.
And it was, I think, for her, a juggling act of, finding that balance of keeping the tone, but pushing forward with what she envisioned for it.
Right,
We all
right.
have to just adjust around that, because ultimately the look of the show isn't going to change with director to director. Like, we're going to keep doing our process, and the showrunners are around to maintain that through line through all the directors, so that there is, no bumps in the road. But we have to interact with them differently, because everyone has a different process.
Very
Probably
interesting.
harder for the directors to adjust to the three little devils than the three little devils to adjust.
You're like, you're in my house. I have been building this house for a very long time, and now you're welcome to my house.
I think that's interesting from like Lake Bell's perspective, is she's coming at it from an actress perspective
Oh,
as well.
true.
So I think that her
Yeah.
concentration really is about the characterizations. I mean,
Yeah.
all of them. I mean, of course, every director cares about that,
Of course.
but everybody brings in their own specialty, right? I mean,
Interesting. Yep.
something that they, if I were to direct a movie, there would be a lot of makeup in it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So
yeah.
it's like you always gravitate towards your strong suit, and I think
Yeah.
that's a difference, and a difference of tone with people that come in. They all have sort of different strong suits.
Very, very, very interesting. What was the funnest time that you guys had? What was the funnest look that you
We
guys
didn't have
really?
fun.
No, it's very serious. This is serious, guys. We cried the whole time.
The whole time we were in shock and dismay.
I had the most fun when we kind of recreated their initial meeting, that time in Mexico, when they went on the kind of clubbing,
Yeah.
where we saw them kind of on that ecstasy binge for days and days and days, because we got to just let them go wild in their looks. And that was, I think when Pam was kind of at her freest in the
Mhm.
story, because they were just meeting, and
Yeah.
to do those club scenes. And that was the first time we put Pam's hair up during the process. And that day that we put it up into that like effortless kind of tossed up updo, which was a lot harder to do than it looked.
I'm sure. I was thinking about that. Yeah.
That was
I'm
one of those
sure.
days where when we did that, we were changing her on set, actually, like in the basement of this like kind of beer soaked club somewhere in LA. And we just were like, let's put it up, because we'd been saving it for something. And then Lily's like, let's just do it. It's, she's out, she's wearing like a tiny little dress, and let's just throw it up. And when we threw it up that day, Lily, like, in her eyes transformed. She finally saw it, I think. She
Oh,
was like, wow, I'm Pam Anderson. And she really
wow.
identified, because it was so, that updo is so attached to Pam. Like,
Yeah.
everyone knows Pam's effortless updos, and
Yeah.
we finally did it. It was so fun to see her reaction, but also it to me was like, wow, we really are onto something here. We've got it.
Yeah. Yeah. How about
I would
you
have
guys?
to say my favorite was another of Barry's amazing updo days, was the Tonight Show that
Oh,
we
yeah.
did. I did the last 3 years of the Tonight Show with Jay Leno.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. And so I had a lot of insight into what it was. And the person who did the Jay Leno makeup that day was Jennifer Aspinall, who was also with us in the very beginning of the process when Jason and I were beginning the process on Pam. And she helped with some of the beginning prosthetic designs of Pam as well. And she and I both had done the Tonight Show together for that last 3 years. And it was truly a heartfelt moment to be able to stand there together on these stages and look at each other and see how real this was. And it was like, it really felt like being back at the NBC studios. And at that point, we were well into the process. So, I'd already been able to take a breath, and it was a moment to just relish and enjoy that. I felt like we were moving strong with something that I think the world's going to like.
And Lily was on fire that day. I mean, she knew that interview inside and out. She knew every interview of Pam's inside and out, and still does probably. But that day specifically, she just embodied every mannerism, every like intonation of Pam's voice, every inflection.
Yeah, the arms and all
Yeah,
this.
she just knew it all. And watching it even on the monitors that day, we all were just like, this is insane. Like she is Pam. Like there's no doubt about it. What are we looking at?
Yeah,
Even when she was with Adam sitting there just talking when the cameras weren't rolling, and Adam Ray, who played Jay Leno, I also worked with on Mad TV. So it was very much like a whole family affair going on for me.
It all comes together.
When they were just back and forth bantering, it felt like, cameras weren't rolling. You're backstage at the Tonight Show and Jay and Pam are just talking to each other. It was really cool.
Oh, that's so serendipitous. It's like, I'm supposed to be here doing this right now. Yeah. Amazing. What about you, Jason?
Oh, I think that my favorite experience of the whole project was probably to what Barry was saying when they were on the sort of they're in Mexico doing their binge, if you will, and having a good time with each other. Because that's some of the most challenging stuff. Does everybody look good? Does everybody look good?
I'm sure.
In all aspects and all perspectives. And when we were testing, early on, trying to get, like, let's just say the breasts right and everything for scenes like that. There was, I remember early on, when she twisted a certain way, you saw artifacts in the appliance, and I knew I was going to need to change it. Me and David had already talked about what we were going to do to resculpt it and everything. But Craig looked over at me and he goes, "We're going to get this, right?" And I said, yeah, we're going to get it. I just need another test and we'll be good. And he goes, "Because your name's on it." And I said, "Listen," and I just said,
"Did you throw up?" I would have thrown up.
No, I didn't throw. I just said, "Listen, buddy, my name's on everything, and everything that I do, I will do to the best of my ability, and we'll get it. You watch." And on that first day, because we shot a lot of that stuff, I believe Barry and David, we shot a lot of that stuff like the first couple of days, right? Just to get it out of the way. The Mexico stuff. And he looked over at me and he was like, "Okay, you got it," and then
challenge accepted and achieved.
And there was relief. And I shared a van ride back with Rob to crew parking that day, and he was like, "Wow, man, you guys really nailed it. You really nailed it." So for me, it was more of a personal thing like that. When of course you already have your own stress that you bring to a project. We're all of our worst critics, and we're all really hard on ourselves. But when other people are sort of worrying about that because they have a whole story to tell and everything, you of course want to get it right and everything. But after that day, I think we all, me personally, I was like, all right, this is going to work, and I think, it's also important too, to know that it's not just us three, it takes a village, right? And to create these things, while I come in and I'm a prosthetic designer, so I get things right, and I'm usually there either I'll do a first episode or the first few days of filming, just to make sure everything's right, and then have somebody shadow us, and then apply that throughout the rest of the season. And on this, we had Mo Meinhardt, who was on Team Pam, as well as Abby Clausen. They were on Team Pam taking care of her daily looks, applying the prosthetics, and they did it beautifully. Everything they did was beautiful. With the design work, Jennifer Aspinall and me, David and Jennifer Aspinall really sort of attacked it early on and got those looks. And then on Team we divided them into teams, right? Team Pam and Team
Sure.
Tom.
That makes sense.
On Team Tommy, there
Boys
was
on one, girls on the other.
yeah, exactly. On Team Tommy, there was Bill Meyer and there was Dave Snyder, and those are all important. It's important to give the whole team that credit because they're in the trenches with you every day.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that are there, with the relationships, with the, just getting everybody, and having that through consistency and looks, so it does take a village. It's not just us three. And, it's always important to remember that.
In something as sensitive as this subject, this is something I talk about a lot with my guests, is how do you handle the sensitivity and the loyalty? And when you say team, loyalty to the actor or the director. Let's say there's a rift. I'm not saying in this case there was, but in your experience, if the actress is uncomfortable, if the actor is uncomfortable with something, and you're in that awkward dance of like the director asking you to convince the talent to do something, what do you do in these situations? I'm just curious.
I tell David.
You tell David. Nice. Yes. Dad.
David, this is what
in this process, we were really lucky because everyone was really concerned with the sensitivity surrounding it and the comfort of the actors, but also everyone else. So we had from day one an intimacy coordinator on set.
Oh, wonderful.
Worked through all of the scenes with Lily and Sebastian, anything that was going to be possibly uncomfortable.
Right.
And those were all very private moments. They were closed sets, and the directors across the board, the producers, everyone was on board with comfort. So there was never any sort of like convincing anyone to do anything because it was all talked about at length. And, all of us work the same way where everything that we do isn't motivated by our own desires. It's everyone's desires as a team. So everything is collaborative from the get-go, and we're never going to put something on someone that they're not comfortable with, because ultimately it affects their performance. If I have an actor sitting in my chair and we haven't talked about the look, and I just say, I'm the department head, this is the hair you're wearing today, that actor might go to set and not feel comfortable. And then what ends up happening is they're fighting with the look all day long. So they're not authentic in their performance, which makes our work less successful as well, because it stands out. It stands out as something doesn't look right in this scene. So collaboration, I think, for me, is always such a huge part of the process. And that's why working with David and Jason has been great, because they are on the same page with that.
Wonderful.
And I'm usually fairly good at walking that line in between. I kind of have a philosophy: show up, tell the truth, and don't be emotionally attached to the result. And completely unrelated to this project. This was completely unrelated to this. I was at a Christmas party a few years ago, and there was the an editor from Ms. Magazine there, and one of the guys, cast-offs from The Bachelor, was there, and it was right after Me Too, and I was standing in a circle with them, and he said, well, this whole Me Too thing, women are partially responsible for this. And the editor from Ms. Magazine I was like, okay, she's going to throw him off the balcony. So I was like talking to both of these two and like saying, okay, well, maybe this would have been better said this way. And went back and forth. And at the end of the evening, she comes up to me, the lady from Ms. Magazine, and she goes, what do you do exactly? Are you a hostage negotiator?
Yes. Yes, I am.
I have, I guess, a skill as a hostage negotiator that I was unaware of until that moment, that when there are discrepancies actually comes in very handy.
I think it should go right on your LinkedIn in the headline. Oh my gosh, you guys, I could talk to you all day, but I promised Andrea I would take only 45 minutes of your time, because I know you are in an onslaught of press right now. And I could not be more happy for all of your success. And that thing hasn't even come out yet. It's just like the most anticipated project this year, and rightfully so. I'm so impressed, and I'm so grateful that you guys sat and talked to me about some of your secrets. And I can't wait to see how this is received. It's going to be nothing but great things, I'm sure.
Thank you very
so
much. I hope when people
Tiffany.
see it, they'll run like the wind.
Yeah.
Congratulations and enjoy all of it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Bye,
taking the
you guys.
time. This was
Bye
fun.
bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye, you guys.
That's all, folks. Can't wait till you watch and experience this series for yourself. It's out today, 2/2/22 on Hulu. It all rhymes. What can I say? That's like, do you need more serendipity than that? It's meant to be, people. I want you to let me know what you think of it. And come back next week. We're going to be talking to Kim Baker. She is the founder of her own line, Glamazon. She was a Wilhelmina model and had an amazing career as a model, and then became a makeup artist, and now runs her own line and definitely is her own boss. So you're going to hear all about that and how she did it. Come back next week. Can't wait till you join me again.
Look Behind the Look is a Vinyl Foot production, written by me, your host, Tiffany Bartok, produced by Jace Bartok, edited by Nicole Tucker, with art design by Kelly Riley. If you're interested in learning more, find our video version on the YouTube channel Look Behind the Look podcast. There you can see rare photos and clips from our guests. And please follow us on Twitter at LookBehindPod and Instagram at LookBehindTheLook. If you like the show, please rate, review, and subscribe. And tell your friends and spread the word. You can subscribe to us on iTunes or any podcatcher of your choice. Thanks for listening to Look Behind the Look.